I want to start off with probably one of the most critical questions. I was just wondering, does Lucy ever surf?
It's a really good question. She does not. She has developed some affection for the water because we live very close to the beach here now in California, and but I see people with the dogs on the board, and a little bit too often the dogs just look horrified.
That's fair. That's
The
fair.
surfer seems happy, but the dog looks a little scared. Some don't.
Yeah.
She may go on a stand-up paddleboard at some time.
With COVID, I know you developed more with surfing, you had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but now that you're traveling again for projects, how do you cope with your anxiety when you don't have those things readily available?
I've learned how to take care of business at a gym. I can stay on an elliptical or something long enough and lift and get it done that way. Sometimes I will do yoga, even though everyone just makes fun of me for being not flexible at all. And I try to sniff out a little surfing or jujitsu where I am.
With Florida Man coming up, I'm sure you can't say anything about it, but I know you directed the final episode of this season, of the one that's coming
Final
out.
two, yes.
Okay. How different was it directing this kind of show to maybe like Agents of Shield or one of your movies?
Very different. It's a first season Netflix show. And I don't know, in some ways it had more of an indie feel, an independent film feel, and that there was not a lot of time to get done these two episodes. Basically 2 hours. It's like a movie, and it was 19 days, I believe, of shooting. I guess one of the film features I made was 21 days, but I thought that was ridiculous. It's a little different in that there's this brilliant writer, Donald Todd, who wrote the script and is the showrunner, the real boss, and a wonderful producer, Michael Costigan, who's Jason Bateman's partner at Aggregate Films, who was the main producer on it, and the really cool people at Netflix. And so they, as a director, I was thrilled that they asked me to do it because I really like the show, even as just in the acting part. But you're very much trying to kind of figure out how to fit in, make your two episodes feel like they're part of the same whole as the other episodes, which I wasn't really able to see much of because they weren't quite done yet. But I really love that cast. It's really wonderful actors and a really wonderful crew in North Carolina. And I was happy to be down there because I went to high school and part of middle school there, and have a lot of connections there. And it was the first time I'd ever really gotten to work there for any length of time. It was a really challenging and really fun experience. But I always wonder how the actors managed to go from acting with me. And I play very much a kind of, I don't know how to describe him. I play a comedic character in that thing, and not someone you should take very seriously for the most part. And that I suddenly shifted and was directing them in some very intense finale episode scenes. They couldn't have been more kind of trusting and ready to go for it. This actor, Edgar Ramirez, Abby Lee, Emery Cohen, just down the line, really good actors. I'm excited for people to see that show.
To kind of move along a little bit, I was wondering, I know early on in your career, you did a lot of theater. You didn't do a whole lot of movies or so. You did like cameos, but you did a lot of theater. And I don't know if you've seen the theater page on the website, but I have went beyond to try to find everything you've ever been in. There is nowhere online other than my website that has all those credits. Just saying.
I think that's true. I don't visit Clark Gregg University too much because it would feel egocentric to me. I don't even want to know that much about me. I don't know necessarily why you do, but it's really flattering. I came up doing theater and really started a theater company in New York with a bunch of friends, and they're still running it, and it's very successful. They have a couple of shows on Broadway right now, the Atlantic Theater Company, and I will go on there so I can remind myself that I did a bunch. I'm spending more time in New York now, and I hope to try to do a play again soon.
How was it working on Broadway? Because you did a few Good Men back in the early 90s. And was there a big difference in doing Broadway and off Broadway?
Sometimes it's just a few blocks away, a Broadway theater from an off-Broadway theater, and some of the off-Broadway, especially if you're doing theater and not musicals, some of the off-Broadway houses are the most distinguished place to be doing a new play in New York. So in those ways, it was very similar, but Broadway is really just a part of the New York tradition, and generally very large theaters from 500 to 3,000 seats. And I don't know, it was pretty early on for me, and I felt really thrilled every day to walk to work there, but also a little overwhelmed by it all. And to do 8 shows a week for a little over a year, I think it was overwhelming. I realize now it made me anxious, and I didn't quite understand that then.
Right.
To, what am I going to have? I need a break. Yeah, there's probably a few people I owe an apology in terms of how tired and crabby I got sometimes.
With your theater mostly in the 90s, and you kind of returned to it a little bit in the 2000s, but you did Christopher Boy Communion right before COVID hit. How different was it to come back to theater like that and do that with your friends?
I did a play. There's a brilliant British playwright named Jez Butterworth, very celebrated guy who I've been lucky to do the New York premiere of 2 of his plays, Mojo and The Night Heron. I think The Night Heron was about 2002 or 3. And then I did another evening of 1 acts by Ethan Cohen called Happy Hour.
Yes.
And I think that was 2014 or 15. And was it longer than that? God knows. I don't even know. I can't keep track of it. It was 2003. Okay, so I was off a little. So I've done those, but I've been living in LA, and my daughter still is 20, and I found the times that I would go away for 2 or 3 months and do a play really hard. I've been really lucky. A lot of actors do that all the time, but I've been really lucky in that I've mostly worked either in LA or close enough that I could get back for the weekends easily, all during her childhood. So that she's now technically an adult. No, she is an adult. Sorry, Stella. So I've been looking around at apartments in New York, trying to see about a way to spend more time there.
Well, you worked with Aaron Sorkin back with A Few Good Men. How was it all these years working with him again for being the Ricardos?
It was, like the thing with Aaron is it's really fun stuff to act. And I met Aaron before A Few Good Men when he had written a couple of plays in New York. I had him come up to visit us in Atlantic in the summer in Vermont. So we would go to Vermont in the summer. And he came up with this new play he'd written called A Few Good Men. And when enough people dropped out or got other jobs, I got a chance to be in it. And so I've known him since he was, I think the New York Times review of A Few Good Men said 29-year-old playwright Aaron Sorkin. Neither of us are that young anymore. And I'd also done a couple episodes of his show Sports Night and a number of episodes of The West Wing. So I've crossed paths with him a number of times over the years. I thought Being the Ricardos was a terrific script, and I adore a lot of those actors, especially Javier and Nicole.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
And so I was just thrilled to get to show up and do some kind of fun, what felt like little plays with those guys as that guy.
When I was doing the website, there's not a lot of information about New Christine. And that's one of my favorite shows. I think it's hilarious.
Thank you. I do too.
It's on at 5 o'clock in the morning. When I can't sleep, I just turn it on and laugh. Yeah.
No, I'm not surprised. I was really working more as a screenwriter for a while when I first came to LA. I still was trying to get acting jobs and doing indies and theater sometimes, but mostly working as a screenwriter. And I can't remember why, but this wonderful woman who was the showrunner, the main writer on that show, Carrie Leiser, I get this call to go in and read with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I was a big Seinfeld fan. And I went in and read with her and just loved it immediately. I was like, well, this is more fun than screenwriting, where sometimes you're just looking at an empty page wanting to bang your head against the wall. And I got lucky enough to do that part and had just the most fun maybe ever. So it's really good hours. My daughter was really young, and we would, you rehearse a few hours a day and you tape one long day, but there's a live audience, and it felt like a play. I felt like CBS didn't quite know what to do with it. They were a little bit more the 2.5 Men kind of network. And and I thought Carrie had a really original, sometimes kind of, you know, irreverent feminist perspective, but in the least preachy way possible. And I just didn't feel like they quite knew what to do with it. They moved it all around on the schedule all the time. They always were about to cancel it. And so there's probably not a lot of press on there out there, but I have to say, of all the things I've done, once it was in reruns, I had people stopping me in airports all the time going, why didn't I know about this show? It's really funny. I think it's really funny. I mean, that cast, Hamish Linklater and Emily Rutherford and Wanda Sykes and all the great people who came in to play with us, Andy Richter and Scott Bakula, so many, Blair Underwood, a lot of people who showed up at S.H.I.E.L.D. at some point.
Even Constance.
Yes, and Constance. That's where I met Constance. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. I really like it too. Whenever I'm somewhere and I can manage to watch it for a few minutes, I think that's funny stuff. I don't know.
Was there ever like a scene that you just really enjoyed filming on that show that you remember? Like, just something that stands out? You're just like, that was.
I would get the script. They would give us the script at the end of the taping of one episode. They'd give us the new episode, and I would pull over and read it because I just thought the scripts were so funny. There was so many scenes where, honestly, I think Julia is such a brilliant, funny person and so willing to do anything, no ego. I learned so much, but sometimes I just felt like I had to pinch myself when I would have these scenes with she and Wanda and Hamish, or just some of the scenes where I was kind of pinching myself that I was getting to try to keep up with her.
Well, you did a fantastic job. I thought you and Julia really bounced off of each other really well. It just really clicked.
Thanks.
So. Early on in your career, you also got to work with George Carlin. How was it meeting him?
That's funny. I just was remembering that. So I was a huge George Carlin fan. Like, I listened to his albums. A lot of his stuff is being circulated right now because he said really, really amazing and funny things about pro-choice, pro-life debate. And a lot of his riffs, they just play. They're more germane than ever. That said, he just was also really funny to kids in the 70s, especially. And when I was out here and like I said, not getting a lot of work, so writing a lot, but I got a job on that sitcom. And I remember thinking like, oh man, I don't think this is a good fit for me, this character. I don't think I know how to make this line funny. And I feel like they're going to fire me at any minute. And that's really, I still think that I did not do a very good job, but he couldn't have been warmer and kinder. And then I don't know what, 7 or 8 years later, I finally started making some money as a screenwriter, and I got a little house on the Venice canals in California. And he drove by in a Volkswagen and stopped the car. I was like, hey, you remember me? I was like, well, yeah, I remember you. You remember me? And he was just so cool. And I was really sad when he passed away. And I would see his widow sometimes over there, and she was always really cool. And it's one of the people who, it was such a small 1 week experience that I haven't thought about it a lot until lately, but there's a documentary that I think maybe Judd Apatow produced coming out soon about him. And he's one of the other people, there's legends that I got a chance to interact with and was really struck by his heart. And, I think a lot of times people think of comedians as being kind of abrasive or rough, but there's a compassion underneath it in a lot of them. And in some of the really special ones, I always felt that out of Richard Pryor too. And he really, really was that.
Yeah, I always thought he was a very funny comedian. And I just thought it was really cool that you were on his show. It was very hard to find footage of that. That's a pretty
I think it only lasted a season or two.
So you worked on a few indie films early in your career, and some of them are very rare. There was one called Lana in Love.
When you say rare, you mean hard to find?
Yes.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, That's what actually one of my favorite films you've ever done. I just thought you did a really good job.
Thank you.
There's another one called Ride Me, but you also worked with the same director for those films. And I was just like, I was always just wondering if there was like a story as to why you kept working with his films, the same actors, because they all kind of did the same movie.
Listen, just already, this is maybe the most thorough interview I've ever done. So you might get some work out of this. Yeah, there was my agents at the time when I arrived in LA, one particular wonderful agent still named Brian Swardstrom. God knows he's probably a manager or a huge producer by now. But he's like, I really want you to meet this guy. I think you'll like this guy. He's a little out there like you. And he introduced me to this wonderful, nutty, but really smart guy named Bashar Shabib, who was from Montreal, was a Syrian Canadian. And I loved this guy. And he's like, yeah, you're right for this. And David Duchovny had just done one of his films too. And he said, we start next week. There's no script. And do you have an improv background? And the first rule of acting is never say no. So I said, yeah, please. Me? Had done none of it. And pretty soon we had a kind of a dinner where with the actress he worked with a lot. And talked about what the story beats might be, and that we would see how it went on the day. And next thing I know, I was in this house in the valley shooting like kind of almost every scene of the movie, or very few, most of them. And it ended up being really, really fun. And in fact, I think it got into the Berlin Film Festival somehow. Nobody's ever seen it. I enjoyed it a lot, but it got into the Berlin Film Festival, and Bashar flew me there. We ended up being roommates. He got a house in Beverly Hills, and he was never there. He was the best roommate ever. I went to Berlin and went to the film festival, and we hung around in Berlin. He just was a mad genius. And I don't know, I think he still makes films in Canada. I mean to look him up. I just work everywhere in Canada but Montreal.
They were odd movies, but good. Like you could just tell that the person that created them cared.
Yeah, he's an artist. He's a very, I think he made like 40 movies or something, really.
Yeah.
And he has his fans. Yeah. I'm one of them.
So you have had many roles in your story career, from, your West Wing. I personally love Will and Grace. That's one of my favorite shows. So I just love that you were on that show. And I know Phil Coulson has been a life-altering character for you and a role for you. Is there any other roles you have ever dreamed of doing that you haven't gotten the opportunity to?
Oh yeah, all of them. No. Well, yeah, you read for great stuff, and you can't do a good job unless you just embrace how deep your desire is to play that role. And it's one of the tough parts about the job. 99% of them you don't get. I often think, well, if anyone knew what Phil Coulson was going to become, I probably wouldn't have gotten that one either. It probably would have gone to somebody else. But luckily Marvel and Jon Favreau, and there was something that was kind of working there, and they really jumped on that and made it more and more of a bigger and bigger part in Iron Man, and then obviously the other stuff. So you know what? I choose to focus on the ones I feel lucky I did get. Even
if they're small cameos, you've made really big impacts on the roles that you have gotten. In the bloopers of Trust Me, there was a photo circulating around where you were in a clear plastic running down the road, and it was cut. And I was wondering, what was that about?
I think the producers were really clear that even a semi-nude scene of me running with a shower curtain around me would destroy the box office possibilities for the film. No, it was, like I said, it was a very, it was a very fast and dirty independent film. Lucy wanted to say hi. It was a very fast and dirty independent film. And you have to make so many compromises in a given day in terms of your plan and what you feel like you need to shoot to tell the story. And a lot of those scenes or things would go away. So you get into editing and you have to go, well, how do I tell the essence of the story I was trying to tell with what I managed to shoot?
Yeah.
And there was a scene, I can't remember, some of this I feel like was in there, where that character, the agent for child actors, Howard Holloway, was she comes to find him, his assistant, played by the wonderful Niecy Nash. She comes to find him, and he's in the shower. He's trying to get ready to go keep this kid from melting down and losing this big part, if I remember right. And no, I'm messing it up. There was a scene where he was chasing somebody who was trying to get away from him, and he was in the shower curtain. And it's probably better for the world that no one ever had to see.
Well, it's a pretty famous picture that floats around every once in a while. And I'm just like, I always wondered what that scene was. So to kind of move on a little bit, because I mean, I think everyone knows that I'm a Felinda fan, a Shield fan. So it'd be kind of remiss not to ask you about Agents of
Please.
Shield. In season 1, did you and Ming Na, from the writing of the first few episodes, feel like Coulson and May were more than possible friends, but longtime friends, or was that the fans that really pushed that along?
That's a really good question. It's more of a question for the writers. I felt like we were, I mean, they'd said it to me even, that they were really old friends, and maybe they'd had a moment in the past somewhere, but they were a couple of old veterans who just knew each other really well. And then I think later, as the stands, the shippers, I don't know, I think there was some chemistry there. I think there's even in the first season, she gets shot up or something, and maybe it was the train episode, the first train episode, and I'm stitching her up, and there was just, I don't know, people kind of freaked out on Twitter.
Yeah, there was an energy about that. Actually, Ming actually said that was one of the sexiest scenes she's ever filmed.
She's right. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, but I mean, you know, she's a tremendous partner to act with, and whatever that chemistry between Coulson and Melinda, it just was there early and always there. I think she even killed me a couple of times in different versions, but it felt meaningful. It felt meaningful.
Tell the way y'all played those two characters, that there was just an undeniable chemistry. I saw it in the first few episodes. I remember when Coulson had his scar and May's like, open up your shirt, and just the look on your face. I keep saying him, but it was you. The way you played it, y'all just played it so brilliantly. It was not hard to fall in love with your characters. So thank you.
Thanks, but that show's not canon, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sure you saw that fans were very upset because they didn't have that moment. Did you feel any kind of disappointment for those fans, or did you think that the ending was just perfect the way it was, or was there any special thoughts on that?
A lot happened within the world of Marvel while we were making that show. Cinematic went one way, Marvel Television went another way, and did some amazing things. But the writers really were stuck with coming up with their own stories with whatever Marvel properties they were allowed to use, and really they had to scramble. And a lot of times, everything they'd planned for a season, they would find out they couldn't quite use the key parts of it just as we started shooting. And we thought we were, and the other thing was that we kept being told, maybe it's a theme for me, that we were maybe done. Almost every year, we didn't know if we were coming back, but we really would be told that the 5th season was going to be the end. And, and the writers pulled me in and said, we're gonna let him go. And I was like, really? Okay. I mean, and it was really sad and hard to say goodbye. And, but really it felt like we'd had a great run. It was these 5 seasons. We all really loved each other as a family. And those last scenes with Belinda, with Ming, and also with Chloe and the rest of them, we couldn't even get through them. So then when they kind of said, well, actually, it turns out we're going to do these 2 more. I understand the writer's predicament. They had to come up with a way to not sell that out. And so they came up with a way where, and he's back, but it's not him. It's somebody else. And we aren't even quite sure where that's going, but it's, he has some of his memories, and we'll see. And so I would just have to fly blind. And the same thing was true for the 7th season, where it was a kind of Blade Runner version, a super evolved AI version. And, it wasn't ideal. I didn't know enough about who he was. But then again, neither did he. So to make this not too long-winded, they felt like Melinda had had enough. Like it was just too much for her to wrap her head around this synthetic, but clearly very similar version of him. And they never really pulled back. They never, even toward the end of it, there was a connection that was real, but they never really let the Felinda part of that come out. And I felt some disappointment about that too. It felt like that was the journey. And I mean, of all the other stuff that we had fought through, it felt like we would the Felinda fire would find a way to
rekindle,
conquer the fact, my syntheticness. But who knows, who knows? Maybe the next time we see Felinda, should that ever happen, she will have gotten over it a little.
I've got some lightning questions for you if you want to.
I love a lightning round.
Well, the first one I want to ask is, what's your eye color? Because people seem to think it's blue and then hazel and people green.
I don't know.
You don't know?
This would be a fast lightning. I don't know. It depends on what I'm wearing. People always say different things.
That's what I
say. Hazel. I don't know what that color means.
Beach or lake?
Lucy just looked at me like she really wants to know the answer. I'm a beach guy.
Hot or cold coffee?
Hot.
Hot.
Until July.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Is it still German chocolate cake?
Yep.
Current favorite TV show?
I'm watching 2 things. I like so much stuff that I'm seeing on TV. I've really been in the run through Ozark, and I just think what they've done on that show is remarkable, and the acting I think is remarkable, and I'm really very tense, but really enjoying the final run of that. I'm also watching a French show called Le Bureau, and about the kind of a CIA super spy, but very grounded in reality. And I love that show too. I'm excited that Barry's back because Bill Hader can do no wrong for me. And it's nice to have a little comedy somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The To-Do List is one of my favorite movies, and y'all are hilarious in that movie. Bill Hader, everything. It was just a perfect film. Connie Britton. Favorite board game?
Not a big board game. Maybe why I'm divorced. My ex really liked board games. What's a board game? Monopoly. I can't think of one.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
Favorite vacation spot?
St. Bart's. Very bougie, but it's true.
Flavor of ice cream?
Coconut, but it's got to have some chocolate in it.
Your favorite current music genre? Because I know you got a lot.
I would say it's kind of alt R&B hip hop. There's just some really interesting kind of new R&B hip hop stuff that I'm really interested in.
What's the last book you read?
I'm reading a book called Barbarian Days, a memoir about growing up a surfer in California in the 70s.
Fish or steak?
Yes.
That's me too.
Surf and turf.
Push-ups or pull-ups?
I mean, I can do a few push-ups. I don't know how many pull-ups I can do. Yeah.
Favorite current Avenger in the MCU? Or superhero, not just Avenger, but any of like maybe some of the new ones.
Some of the new ones. I'm really interested in the journey of Anthony Mackie as the new Cap.
I'll let you go. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work you do. I puzzle sometimes as to why you do it, but I really like that you do.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. And I hope this isn't the last time we get to do this. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, now that I know what a great interviewer you are.
Thank you.